Hey everybody, welcome back to day 5 of the Ravnica Allegiance set review on the Mana Leek. I'm John as always, and it's time for the last mono-colored set review. Tomorrow will be multicolored. It will be 3 of the guilds, and then the next day will be 2 of the guilds, and then the artifacts and lands. Be aware those 2 videos will be a little bit longer because there are a lot of gold cards in the set. Also a reminder, if you're watching this on Tuesday, tomorrow on Wednesday, January 16th, WotC has invited me to a streamer-only event where they have given me a fully stacked arena account full of gems and cards for me to play sealed Ravnica Allegiance all day, a day before it comes out on Magic Arena and Magic Online. So go check that out over at twitch.tv/themanaleek. Now, just before we jump into the set review, I do want to do something very exciting here and talk about Inked Gaming for a second, and how you can get a free playmat. You might know I'm an Inked Gaming affiliate. Use the promo code MANALEEK10, all one word, 10 is the number, to get 10% off your order at Inked Gaming, but I am now an Inked Gaming sponsored affiliate, which means I get more support from them and I work more closely with them, which can also mean some more giveaways for you guys. So if you go over to twitch.tv/themanaleek and you check out my stream on January 17th, where I'll be playing Ravnica Allegiance, as it will have come out on both MTGO and Magic Arena. I don't know which one I'm going to play it on just yet. You will get a chance to win a playmat. If you haven't checked out my streams before, we do marble races during the streams. Marble races are basically a fancy way of doing a randomized giveaway. We actually play them for fun and keep track of points with the leaderboard system, but I also do use them when we do giveaways. So we'll be doing a Marble Grand Prix, which means for everybody who is there that day, we will do a series of races, and the overall point total winner will get themselves a playmat. So go check that out, twitch.tv/themanaleek on January 17th, and go check out Inked Gaming and use the promo code MANALEEK10 if you do buy something there for 10% off your order. But let's get on into the first card. The first card is Axebane Beast. Axebane Beast is 3 and a green for a creature beast at common. It's a 3/4, and that's it. It's just a not even big dumb green vanilla creature. It's just a green vanilla creature. It's fine. You'll play it if you have to, and I guess it's better than a 3/3 for 4, which is what we sometimes get. It's still in the C sort of minus range. If you can find better cards, play them. I don't think it's the end of the world if you have to play it, though, so I think we can go with an even C, but it's not exciting, and it's not something you should go out of your way to pick or play. C for Axebane Beast. Up next is Biogenic Ooze. Biogenic Ooze is 3 green for a creature ooze at Mythic. It's a 2/2, but when it does enter the battlefield, you do get an additional 2/2 green ooze creature token. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each ooze you control, so this ooze and the other ooze. But you can get more oozes because you can pay 1 green to make another 2/2 ooze creature token. This seems really powerful. It's not exactly Pack Rat, but it's pretty similar to Pack Rat. If it survives the turn, you've got a 6/6 for 5, because you have 2 3/3 oozes. You then likely have the mana to make another ooze, and at the end of that turn, you've got 11 power and toughness spread across 3 bodies. This seems like a snap first pick, probably just shy of an absolute bomb, because it does take a slight touch of time. There is that, half a turn or whatever where this is just a 2/2, and if it dies, all you've got left is a 2/2. But if this lives through that one moment, this thing is insane. This is a snap first pick. I've got this at an A-. I think it's super, super, super good. A- for Biogenic Ooze. Keeping on the Biogenic train, we've got Biogenic Upgrade. Biogenic Upgrade is 4 green for a sorcery and uncommon. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures. Then double the number of +1/+1 counters on each of those creatures. It's not doubling all the counters everywhere, just on those 1, 2, or 3 creatures. Keep in mind, this is basically just an aura. So it has all the downsides of an aura, especially if you just put 6 counters on 1 creature. Your opponent bounces it, and there goes your card and 6 mana. Spreading them out defeats that downside to an extent, but this is 6 mana, sorcery speed, +2/+2 to 3 creatures. Is that good? I don't think so. I don't think it's that exciting. In long grindy games, sure, it'll help improve your board state, but 6 mana, I really want to be ending the game. And well, maybe I luck out and I throw 6 counters onto a 3/3 flyer, and now I just kill them, but it's really glass cannony for me. So while I think people will get pretty dreamy over this and best case scenario mentality, I think that's going to be wrong. I'm going to start this on a C- and say that I don't really want to play it. It's just too costly for what is essentially an aura, or a few of them stapled together. C- for Biogenic Upgrade. Up next is Enraged Forerunners. Enraged Forerunners is 5 green for a creature boar at rare. It's a 7/7 with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. When Enraged Forerunners enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. This is really good. It's like not exactly Crater Hoof, but it's still going to cause a lot of damage like Crater Hoof. And plus Crater Hoof is usually kind of overkill. Usually you're dealing them, like 20, 30, 40 extra damage. You don't need all that extra overkill. Still, you do need to hit this mana cost and have a sizable board. There's a lot that you got to have to go onto this, and so you are going to need ramp. You don't just throw this into your green deck that has a whole bunch of 2-drops and 3-drops and 4-drops and maybe a 5-drop. Unless a lot of those are ramp. Now you're in luck. There is some ramp. I don't want to say this, but I might even play a Locket if I really needed to get an Enraged Forerunners off. But this thing, when it hits the board, should probably end the game or make the game almost over. It's really good, but you have to be able to cast it. It's a B+, assuming you have ramp. If you don't have ramp, you have to make the adult decision and cut this card. Keep that in mind. B+ for Enraged Forerunners. Up next is Enraged Ceratok. Enraged Ceratok is 2 green for a creature Rhino at uncommon. It's a 4/4. Enraged Ceratok can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. This is really good, like shockingly good. It's so close to a vanilla creature and yet is great. A 4/4 for 4 is about my perfect spot on the vanilla test. Anything higher than that for a flat-out vanilla creature is just getting big and dumb and expensive. But 4/4 is going to be relevant in almost all points of an average game. It doesn't easily get outclassed, and then getting that additional relevant text on the card is just gravy. This might actually be just like a straight out B, which is weird for such a straightforward creature, but screw it. Rhino Boy here, he gets a B. B for Enraged Ceratok. Up next is Gatebreaker Ram. Gatebreaker Ram is 2 and a green for a creature Sheep. Yeah, we've had Sheep before. At uncommon, it's a 2/2. Gatebreaker Ram gets +1/+1 for each gate you control. As long as you control 2 or more gates, Gatebreaker Ram has Vigilance and Trample. This is a pretty decent gate payoff. Getting Vigilance and Trample is a really good payoff for what would at least be a 4/4 at that point, and potentially getting bigger for a 3-drop. This is probably our Gatekeeper Gargoyles of the format. I'll probably avoid the gate deck for a little bit, but I do think it looks a lot more real in this set than it did in the last one. And it was real now and then in the last set. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I felt it was it was gimmicky until it wasn't, basically. There were a couple of cards that you absolutely had to have or the deck was dead, I think. So I'm going to go with like a B on this if you're in the Gates deck, and like a C- if you're, lacking on Gates, then it's just kind of a dumb creature. So B in the right deck for Gatebreaker Ram. Up next is Gift of Strength. Gift of Strength is 1 and a green for an instant at common. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains Reach until end of turn. Paying an extra mana to give a Giant Growth. Reach isn't really my jam because Giant Growth is by far at its best on attack, and of course Reach doesn't do anything on the attack. But adding that slight bit of versatility is fine, and 2 mana isn't really backbreaking. Still, this is your run-of-the-mill combat trick, which means C+ is the ceiling, and this is not a C+. Without giving Trample or something, it's just a flat C. Play it if you can, and if you don't, and you got better stuff, there's no reason to feel bad about not fitting this into your deck. Straight C for Gift of Strength. Up next is Growth Chamber Guardian. Growth Chamber Guardian is 1 and a green for a creature Elf Crab Warrior at rare. It's a 2/2 with pay 2 and a green for Adapt 2. And whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Growth Chamber Guardian, you may search your library for a card named Growth Chamber Guardian. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. All of that, of course, is flavor text in limited, because the odds of you having a second Growth Chamber Guardian is slim to nil. So this is a 2/2 for 2 that becomes a 4/4 if you put 3 more mana into it. This is pretty good, actually. Like I might have talked down on it by saying, oh, it's just flavor text. But this card is fine because it's a 2/2 for 2, which you know, we talked about a couple of days ago or yesterday that used to be great, or at least solidly good, and is now less good. But on turn 3, when this attacks, it's a 4/4 if you hit your third land. So this thing's actually going to feel really, really good, I think. On turn 2, attacking as a 4/4 is going to feel great. Even top decking this as a 5-mana 4/4 is not the worst thing in the world. That's going to be a relatively relevant creature. So I think this is a super fine C+. I'm not really going to go up to a B-, but C+ is totally fine for Growth Chamber Guardian. Up next is Gruul Beastmaster. Gruul Beastmaster is 3 and a green for a creature human shaman at uncommon. She's a 2/2 with Riot. Whenever Gruul Beastmaster attacks, another target creature you control gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is Gruul Beastmaster's power. So we've got a 2/2 haste for 4 that gives +2 to another creature, which is okay, but I feel like that will be outclassed by the time it comes down. Still, there will be games where your opponent just doesn't have a board, and that's some real damage out of nowhere. But if you are expecting your opponent to just not play creatures, you need to have more respect for your hypothetical opponents. I think the default use case here is that she's a 3/3 who gives +3/+0, which is totally fine. Not a super high pick, but if you're green, you'll always play her. But I do think 3/3 is the very default mode here. 2/2 haste is just when you got lucky and your opponent hasn't played anything. So C+ for Gruul Beastmaster. Up next is Guardian Project. Guardian Project is 3 and a green for an enchantment at rare. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature in your graveyard, draw a card. This probably isn't that good. It's tempting, because the typical draft deck is pretty darn singleton in nature. The odds of having 2 of the same creature is not huge. It happens, of course, but it's not that often. And green certainly loves it when it gets card draw. In fact, this is basically Beast Whisperer from Guilds of Ravnica, except it can't be killed by removal spells. And that sounds good, but not being a creature and taking your entire turn 4 off sounds awful to me. I don't think this is going to actually be good. I certainly get the appeal of it, but it's another rare do-nothing enchantment, and I'm not sold on that. The fact that it's the same casting cost and same-ish effect as Beast Whisperer tries to pull me in, but I think it's a trap. I'm going to keep my eye on it, but I so strongly feel like turn 4 is going to be a turn where you need to establish the board, and playing a do-nothing enchantment is not where you want to be. So I'm going to put this at the D+ range. I'll keep an eye on it. I definitely could be wrong. I know people are going to yell at me because they're thinking that they're going to draw 17 billion cards off of this, but I am going to start at a D+ on Guardian Project. Up next is Incubation Druid. Incubation Druid is 1 and a green for a creature elf druid at rare. It's an 0/2. Tap, add 1 mana of any type a land you control could produce. If Incubation Druid has a +1/+1 counter on it, add 3 mana of that type instead. How do you get a counter on her? Well, she's got 3 green, adapt 3. She becomes a 3/5. This is great. It's a 2-mana mana dork, which is already a snap high pick, possibly first in some packs. That's like a B- in my books usually. Then if I do get a counter on this, preferably before I have to adapt her, because getting all that mana on turn like 6 or later isn't a big deal. I say this a lot, but your ramp needs to happen before turn 4-ish. If your ramp is happening after, it typically isn't that important. But luckily, even with her, your ramp is started, and then it just gets better. So as I said, the base of this is a B-, and I'm actually not going to raise it much higher than a B-, just because I think the odds of getting that 3 extra mana when it's still super relevant isn't going to happen too much. But there are situations and times where it will certainly feel really good. So I'm just going to keep her at a B-, B- for Incubation Druid. Up next is a reprint all the way back from a couple of sets ago, Dominaria. Mammoth Spider. Mammoth Spider is 4 and a green for a creature spider at common. It's a 3/5 with Reach. This is fine. It can be main decked if you have no way of handling flyers at all, but it does play slightly better out of the sideboard. It's big enough that it can attack, though, and it's not exactly restrictive in its casting cost. It's only 5 mana. All in all, though, I think you're okay including this in the main deck of most decks, which is similar to how I felt in Dominaria. It's around like a C, but don't hesitate to cut this if you do have other ways of dealing with flyers. Up next is Open the Gates. Open the Gates is a single green mana for a sorcery at common. Search your library for a basic land card or gate card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's fine. I think it's mostly better than a Traveler's Amulet because you're just paying 1 mana for it, and you get to do that on turn 1. If you're playing 3 or more colors, I think you probably play this 100% of the time, assuming one of your 2 main colors is green. If your splash color is green, you're not playing this. But if you're just playing a 2-color deck, this is extremely cuttable. Going and getting a land of one of your 2 colors is just not worth an entire card in your deck. So this is like a D- or an F in a 2-color deck. But the second you start splashing around or even going 3 or 4 or 5 colors, this goes up to sort of like a C+, and you can always play it. C+, F for Open the Gates. Up next is Rampage of the Clans. Rampage of the Clans is 3 and a green for an instant at rare. Destroy all artifacts and enchantments. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green centaur creature token. So we already talked about this a little bit in red, but there's not that many artifacts that people should be playing. People will, and they just won't matter to you. There's a couple that are kind of scary. Enchantments, there's a couple that are annoying, and a lot of awful ones that hopefully people aren't playing. So real talk here, this isn't going to hit that much. It's super not going to hit much. And the other thing, the weird thing here is it's all artifacts and enchantments. Yours go away too. And I don't even know if I want to use this as artifact or enchantment removal because it gives them a 3/3 centaur. There's like 1 artifact, 2 artifacts, I guess, that I would actually want to destroy and give them a 3/3 green centaur in its place, and no enchantments where I'd actually want to give them a relevant creature. So I don't know what the plan is here. I don't know if you're supposed to play a bunch of bad enchantments and get yourself 3/3 green centaurs. This card's awful. It's an F. It's just an F. It's an F. Don't play it. F for Rampage of the Clans. Up next is Rampaging Rendhorn. Rampaging Rendhorn is 4 and a green for a creature beast at common. It's a 4/4 with Riot. So it's a 4/4 with haste for 5, or it's a 5/5 for 5. 5/5 for 5, perfect vanilla test passer, just on that positive side. I've talked about this more than a few times this set review, but there's a point where paying a mana cost for that number of power and that number of toughness stops being all that good because the cost is too much. And 5 is about where I think I'm happy with it. A 6/6 for 6 with no abilities, I'm a lot less likely to play that. And a 7/7 for 7, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. But 5/5 for 5, totally fine. And hey, if the situation looks good to me and I can get in for a quick 4, I'll make it a 4/4 haste. This is just fine. It's just a straight C. There are definitely times where I'm just going to have better cards and I'll cut it, and there are definite times where I say, oh, this is a card I can play. So a C for Rampaging Rendhorn. Up next is Regenesis. Regenesis is 3 green for an instant at uncommon. Return up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Nope. I never play these cards. They're never worthwhile, especially not for 5 mana in green, where that could be a relevant creature. But John, I hear you say, this returns your bomb. No. It returns your bomb if you've drawn your bomb, played your bomb, lost your bomb, and drawn this card. That's a whole lot of decision trees where if all of that doesn't go exactly the way you want, then it does not draw your bomb. If you don't draw your bomb, it doesn't draw your bomb. If you don't play your bomb, it doesn't draw your bomb. If your bomb survives, this doesn't draw your bomb. I hate that argument. It's not relevant to this card. This is a card in your deck. It costs a card in your deck. And the cards that it gets you are random. You get to choose them in the game when you cast it, but they're random across all of the games that you play this card. They could be anywhere from the 2 best cards in the format that come back to your hand, or it could be that your choices are a land and another land. That's not good. I want cards that consistently do the same thing every time at the same power level. And this is just not that. So I've got this at a D. I do not want to play it. People absolutely will play this, and I don't think it's right. D for Regenesis. Up next is Root Snare. Root Snare is 1 and a green for an instant at common. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. F-. It's fog, but it costs twice as much. Do not ever play fog in a limited deck. Ever. It is a bad card. It does nothing, and you will lose the vast majority of games that it's in your hand. F-. Up next is Sagittarius Volley. Sagittarius Volley is 2 and a green for an instant at common. Destroy target creature with flying. Sagittarius Volley deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control. Another sort of arena discussion. This is sideboard only in best of 3. I don't think you ever main deck this in best of 3. And in best of 1, you need a way to deal with the spirit decks that are going to happen to be there, and you'll probably have a target for this. It may not be a good target, but you'll probably have a target in most games, or at least most matchups. So I think you do main deck this in best of 1, but in best of 3, this should sit in your sideboard until you find out that there are scary flyers and a whole bunch of spirits or X1 flyers that this can hose, and you side it in, and it's going to be great. So it's a D+, sideboard only in best of 3. Best of 1, probably main deck it. Up next is Rouille Caretaker. Rouille Caretaker is a single green mana for a creature Dryad at common. She's an 0/3 with Defender, and you can tap and tap an untapped creature you control to add 1 mana of any color. It's a mana dork. No, it's not. Tapping this creature and another creature is not a cost that you're looking to pay to get a mana. Your opponent will have you dead in no time. I just don't think I really want to play this, unfortunately. I'm going to put it at a D. If it turns out to be useful, cool, but I'm not touching this to start. Having to tap my 0/3 Defender and another creature to get 1 mana is just way too much. Way too much. D for Rouille Caretaker. Up next is Sorrowform Hybrid. Sorrowform Hybrid is 1 and a green for a creature human lizard warrior at common. It's a 2/2 with 4 green, adapt 4. Upside Bears. The new bears. It's a 2/2 for 2, which used to be fine and playable and now is not quite so playable, but it's got that upside of later in the game being very relevant as a 6/6. Easy C+ here. You should probably never cut one of these unless your deck is absolutely stacked. And of course, you could live the dream and on turn 8, you've got nothing better to do. You top deck this and hey, it's an 8 mana 6/6. It's not great, but what else are you going to do, right? C+ for Sorrowform Hybrid. Up next is Sahana Wayfinder. Sahana Wayfinder is 1 and a green for a creature elf scout at uncommon. It's a 2/1. When Sahana Wayfinder enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it on top of your library. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Top of your library, really slow. Really slow. This will, I guess, help you keep some slightly less than stellar hands, and it is a piker, which is not the worst thing in the world, but it's probably still a C-. I still don't really want to play this. I don't want to keep a sketchy hand, use this to find a land on turn 2, and then have to put that land on top rather than draw it or anything else that even a different card in green does for us. What was it called? Open the Gates. Just gets us the land into our hand. This is too slow for me, so I'm going to go C- on Sahana Wayfinder. I don't really want to play it. Up next is Steeple Creeper. Steeple Creeper is 2 and a green for a creature Frog Snake at common. It's a 4/2 for 3, which is not what we often get, especially not at common. 3 and a blue. Steeple Creeper gains flying until end of turn. So a 4/2 for 3 is okay-ish. Like, I hate playing 4/2s for 4, but for 3, I play 3/2s for 3 and I'm okay with it. So a 4/2 for 3 is just gravy right there. But if you're Simic, making it fly, that's really good. Steeple Creeper looks surprisingly okay for an X2 creature for me. Being able to fly once there's blockers on the ground, shutting it down is going to be huge. I think this is really good. If you're in Simic, C+. You probably just never cut it. If you're in Gruul, it's a little bit more like a C-. You maybe don't play it if you don't have a spot. C-, C+ for Steeple Creeper. Up next is Stony Strength. Stony Strength is a single green mana for an instant at common. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Untap that creature. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's kind of an okay trick. Keeping the counter is nice. You know, it's better than +1/+1. And untap is a fantastic surprise. Untap combat tricks are usually almost shockingly good, and for 1 mana it's as cheap as you can possibly get. I think this is a totally fine C combat trick. It's not one that I'm, jamming in every deck like I do with Sure Strike or I'll do with Scry Strike, but it's fine. If you've got a spot for a combat trick, here you go. You'll be okay with it. C for Stony Strength. Up next is Sylvan Bushstrider. Sylvan Bushstrider is a tall antelope thing. 2 and a green for a creature beast at common. It's a 3/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. Okay, if you need a creature, here you go. It's a 3/2 for 3. We just talked about how I play those and I'm okay with them, and how it's weird that we get a common 4/2 with an upside for 3, but whatever. 3/2 is below that standard vanilla test rate, but you'll play it if you've got a spot. The life gain is about as meaningless as it could possibly ever be. It's basically flavor text. But yeah, it's a C. Play it if you got a spot, and if you don't, cut it. You're fine either way. Up next is Territorial Bore. Territorial Bore is 1 and a green for a creature boar at common. It's a 2/2. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, Territorial Bore gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance until end of turn. It's an upside bear, but the upside isn't really that crazy. If I'm dropping 4+ power creatures, I'm not really sure if my 2/2 momentarily becoming a 3/3 is really going to be that impactful at that point in the game. Still, it could represent some extra damage if the board's clear or whatever, but I don't think it's really that big. I think this is just totally unimpactful filler. If you have a spot, play it, and if you don't. It's just another run-of-the-road C here. Middle of the road, run-of-the-mill. Run-of-the-road C. Territorial Bore. A card that I don't think is middle of the mill is Titanic Brawl. Titanic Brawl is 1 and a green for an instant at common. The spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, which, hey, look at that. Both green guilds do. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control at instant speed. The discount is cute. It's almost meaningless. Like 1 mana difference between 1 and 2 is not really that big, but the instant speed fight is always fun. It can really mess up your combat math. You can do it in response to pump spells, all kinds of cool little stuff like that. I like this a fair bit, especially if my Simic or Gruul creatures are going to be getting a little bit bigger than normal with their counters, because not only do I get a discount, but the creature's much more likely to just gobble up whatever it's fighting. I'd first pick this in weaker packs, and I'd always play a pair of these at least in my green decks. So B- for Titanic Brawl. Up next is Tower Defense. Tower Defense is 1 and a green for an instant at uncommon. Creatures you control get +0/+5 and gain reach until end of turn. Sideboard only, but against flyers. Not really against the whole idea of, in a board stall, this would stop a flunge from happening. This is just so far away from what you should be planning in a game of Magic. It's not as bad as Fog, but it's in a similar boat. What I often find happens with spells like this is people will say, but if you're in a board stall and then your opponent does a big attack at you and you block perfectly and you cast this spell, your creatures live and theirs die. But that requires your opponent, for some reason, attacking you with attacks that without this spell would be trades across the board, because your creatures aren't getting more power. So your theoretical opponent is making a flunge that's going to result in both of you having empty or empty-ish boards. They're not going to do that. So the hypothetical situation that people brew up about cards like this just doesn't happen, and surprise, the card ends up not actually being that good. Where I side this in is just as a card that basically says give a creature reach, or in this case give your team reach. Against flyers, cool, this card's fine, this card's a total D, but don't play this with the plan of your opponent being a bad Magic player. Respect your opponent. Believe that every opponent you're playing is a pro Magic player who won't make dumb moves. D for Tower Defense. Up next is Trollbred Guardian. Trollbred Guardian is 4 and a green for a creature troll frog warrior, and it really looks like a Goomba from the Mario Brothers movie. Uncommon for a 5/5. 2 and a green, adapt 2. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. This thing is nuts. Like, it's nuts. It's a 5/5 for 5. It passes the vanilla test, and like I said, 5/5 for 5 is, I think, like the top end of the vanilla test where it's just super solid before it starts to fall off. But on turn 6, this attacks like a 7/7 trample. This attacks like a Colossal Dreadmaw with a +1/+1 counter on it, and you paid 1 less mana to cast it in the first place. This thing seems nuts, and I keep feeling like I'm missing something here. I've got this really high. I've got this at a B+. Like, I think this card is absolutely insane. If you pair it with a bunch of creatures with counters and they all have trample, then holy moly. But yeah, this card seems just nuts. I've got this at a B+, and I think I'll first pick this in a relatively large number of packs. Removal beats this, and Crazy Bombs beat this, and then I'm picking my my Goombas here. So B+ for Trollbred Guardian. Our second last card for today is one that people have gone nuts over for standard, thinking it needs to be banned or something already. Wilderness Reclamation. Wilderness Reclamation is 3 and a green for an enchantment at uncommon. At the beginning of your end step, untap all land you control. I don't think this is any good. It's a 4 mana enchantment that takes up a slot in my deck for my Gruul aggro deck that wants creatures, or my Simic ramp deck that wants more mana on the same turn. Not mana on my turn, and then the same amount of mana on my opponent's turn. I don't see the need in most green decks for you to have your lands untapped. Green is a lot of creatures and sorceries, and the instants don't cost that much anyways. I don't see the value here. I don't think this card's any good. I'm never playing this card in Limited. I've got this at an F. I don't think you should ever play Wilderness Reclamation. It's just an F for me. Our final card is Wrecking Beast. Wrecking Beast is 5 green for a creature beast at common. It's a 6/6 with Riot and Trample. So getting Trample keeps this from being unplayable. A 7/7 for 7 is too much mana. We've talked a lot today about the vanilla test. 7/7 for 7 is where it really starts to fall off. I don't want to play a 7/7 for 7 because 7 is not a guarantee in a game of limited Magic. 7 mana. You don't hit that every game. Some games, sure, you hit 15 mana, but you don't always hit 7. 7 is a high number. The fact that this has Trample means that it is impactful enough for it to cost 7. Casting it as a 6/6 with haste could be correct now and then, because of course if your opponent and you are in a race or something, they may not be expecting a 6/6 haste trample to be coming at them, and they may just die, and that'll be a great situation. And in the situations where you have to cast it or want to cast it as just a non-hasty 7/7 trample, it'll probably be fine enough there as well. So I think this is like a C-. I absolutely do not want to play this in every deck. I need to make sure I have a plan for getting to 7. And even in those decks, I feel like there still just might be better cards out there. So I still think you cut this the vast majority of the time, but I don't think it's unplayable. So C- for Wrecking Beast. Big dumb creatures that cost more than 6 start to get really bad unless they are ludicrous. So that's going to wrap it up for green. Green looks interesting. There's a number of really good Bs, and of course the A- of Biogenic Ooze, but this is the first color that hasn't had an A+. I guess red stole its A+. I don't know how green's going to go. It looks really good in both Simic and Gruul. I think Gruul looks a little bit better, but of course we'll take a much more in-depth look at the guilds tomorrow, where we take a look at the first 3 guilds, and then on Thursday we'll take a look at the next 2 guilds and the rest of the cards in the set. So let me know what you think of these cards. Are you excited for green? Are you excited for any of these cards? What cards do you disagree with? Do you want to yell at me that Wilderness Reclamation is actually amazing? Let me know in the comments down below, and talk to each other. Talk to yourselves, I guess. Talk to yourself in the comment. Just reply to yourself 7 times. As always, if you do have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at the Mana Leek. That's Leek, like the vegetable, not the card. You can also find me at facebook.com/themanaleek, twitch.tv/themanaleek, and patreon.com/themanaleek. If you want to go over to inkedgaming.com and buy a playmat, or I think they sell dice maybe, and sleeves, and they sell board games now, just like straight up board games, really good ones too. You can go over there and save 10% by using ManaLeak10 as your promo code. If you like the content, click that thumbs up button, click subscribe if you want to see more, and if you do have questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, see y'all next time for the Gold Set Review Part 1.